Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. This is Sonal Shah, founder of the Urban Catalyst and host of this podcast, Narratives That Move. At TUC, our We Inspire program aims to shift mindsets and practices towards climate resilient, gender equitable cities through conversations, convenings, and stories. Narratives That Move is a reflective podcast where I sit with change makers driving transformation on the ground to uncover their strategies, tools, and everyday innovations that make our cities safe, inclusive, and climate resilient. I'm excited to speak with Prachi Merchant, Senior Advisor in Maharashtra for the United Nations Environment Programme. She has worn many hats, including as the member of the Advisory Committee on Gender in the Municipal Corporation of Greater Mumbai. And we really hope to learn from her experience in this role. Prachi, to the podcast.
Thanks. Hi, Sonal. Yeah.
We are here today to talk about your work along with other organizations in incorporating a gender perspective in the report on the draft development plan for Mumbai 2014 to 2034 and thereafter. Now, the DP for Mumbai, as it is called, includes a dedicated chapter on gender, special groups, and equity. While there is literature on it, I think it's a good time, given that it has been close to 9 years, 8 to 9 years since the report was published, to our listeners would benefit from hearing a very brief overview of the process and how you came to be involved in it.
Yeah, thanks, Sonal, for asking this. And it's always a pleasure to think about the process, how it has been, and to narrate it because it's the first time that any city in India has been able to introduce a separate chapter in the development plan. The process was very exciting, and in the hindsight now, it was one of its kind. So to take it back to 2014, 2015, the earlier team who was working on the development plan was kind of replaced by a new team because there was a backlash from the citizens for a number of reasons. The existing land use was not very accurate. There was no hearing done. And suddenly the citizens and citizen groups came together and they kind of formed something called Hamara Shehar Vikas Abhiyan, Hamara Shehar Vikas Abhiyan, where different groups came together and they voiced and they made it mandatory for the Municipal Corporation of Mumbai to rethink and to put everything on a transparent portal for everyone to view it, and they compelled the corporation to scrap the development plan, and that is how the team came, a new team which was under the leadership of a retired IS officer who has an extensive portfolio in urban, Dr. Ramanat Jha. And he formed a team under the All India Institute of Local Self-Government, and we were inside the BMC and not as consultants outside. So me as an urban planner, and then I also formed my team within the BMC through AIILST, All India Institute of Local Self-Government, within the BMC. And that, I think, was a very unique way to tell BMC that we are not consultants, we are not outsiders, we are with you, but we are also here to listen to what citizens groups like Hamara Shehar Vikas Abhiyan wants to say. So, what had happened was that these groups, there were multiple sectoral representations. So, whether it's health, whether it's homeless people, whether it's another social sector, and one of them was this gender group who was quite strong. So I would say they started with something called confrontation. I would say they came together, they made their voice, and they entered into the BMC. And our mandate as the new team was to listen to such groups and to see what can be done best to incorporate that into the development plan. So with that mandate, we started listening to such groups, and the gender group also had varied experts in it. So there were gender representations, organizations who had worked for a long time on ground. There were architects, there were planners, there were professors. So representation went wide here, and they voiced it. Now, usually what happens is that most of the non-governmental organizations, they know how to bring their ground experience and communicate that to the government. But what can be done technically into the master planning process is something they are not able to do it. So while they voice it, they don't know what to do. Whereas our job was, we know what to do, but we don't know the ground reality. So it was a very interesting and learning process for both the ends to come to that alignment, to establish that common vocabulary. So the confrontation part now came into, say, consultation for me to understand what really happens on ground and then collaborate with them. So we mentioned that for me to put it in the development plan as a land use reservation, I need to know some norms. Okay, to convert it into some calculations, what is the ratio, how many, what you really want, can you convert that into a land use? So their strong, voice, their strong representation and their strong ask was that women workforce participation is very low, as low as 16 to 25. And of course there is no definite data for this, but still they had this figure, and they said, how do we increase that? So they mentioned, so we had to work with them. It was almost multiple consultations. So while they have had many consultations outside, we then started talking to them within the BMC, saying that, what is it that you want? What do you mean by workforce participation? What will make this figure go up? So then we came up by saying that they would need, when they come to a city to work, even if they have an opportunity, they do not know where to stay. They do not know how to take care of the children and yet go to work. Or majority women do have the responsibility of even taking care of old people. I mean, nowadays it's different, we do share, but still the primary responsibility lies on her shoulders. So how do we take care of old people? What about distressed women? What about single women? What about single parent, single mothers? So these were some of the issues that they laid out on the table, and they said that now how do we, so we had three things. Increase the workforce participation, how do I convert this into a land use reservation, and what kind of ratio, what kind of conversion into an actual square feet area, or how much of square meter area, or how much of reservations you require in the entire city. So some of the data which was missing, we tried to make it for ourselves just to start somewhere. So my role was to, kind of be a bridge between the BMC, where we are hard pressed on time and we are wanting to put some reservations on the land use, actually mark it into the development plan of Mumbai, and the ask that Hamara Shahar Vikas Abhiyan gender group had from their side.
Fantastic. I mean, this is a really, really good overview, Prachi, and thank you for bringing an insider's perspective here. Maybe we'll just take a moment to give outline some of the organizations who were part of the gender and DP group. It might just to kind of both acknowledge them as well in terms of their role in working with you. I noticed that the draft development plan or the DP of Mumbai had standards, say for example, for working women's housing, one per administrative ward or one per 2.5 lakh residents, etc. Can you give us an insight on how these standards were arrived at, or was it to say that maybe these need to be spatially distributed across the city?
Yeah, I mean, I remember that we first started with the master plan, right? So, with the master plan, our city, Mumbai especially, is divided into 24 wards, and each ward, I would say, is as good as a city because the populations are quite high. However, if you look at the wards, even the team that I had working with me, we had divided planners to be responsible for one ward each. And so what we decided was Mumbai being a land crunch city, we although we would want to have much more of this or reservations for these centers. Now we call it a center. I'll explain you why it's a center. We could only allocate one per ward. So you're right. I mean, there is no standard, and each city has to take that call. I mean, the figures were not very evident for us. So all we did was to first try and see how can we allocate at least one per ward. Then in that center, we thought what is most essential is the working women housing, because it was identified that housing is something that they do not find very easily, and especially women of say lower middle class people. I mean, higher middle class people, women generally do find their own ways, but what about that sector? So we wanted them to have accessibility to working women housing. Supported with that was the childcare center. Supported to that was senior citizens daycare center or senior citizens housing, and skill development, that's Aadhaar Kendra, and a provision of anything that is compatible as a commercial component which would make the center sustainable. So these were some of the 4-5 things we said a center should have, and we for that, and maybe supporting other reservations also, in this particular DP we had introduced something called multiple use or mixed use within the vertical. I mean, generally you do have mixed use organically, that you see it in Mumbai, but here we consciously said that you can go higher and you can have mixed use. So for the first time we introduce XX plus YY plus ZZ. So the reservation is not just multi-purpose working women housing. It could also be something like an auditorium. This could also be something else. So that was the formula that we introduced. Now, once that was introduced and marked on the development plan, we realized that the childcare center cannot be just one for a ward, which is really big. So then we thought we should go a step further by saying electoral ward. A city would have some 250 odd electoral wards. So we said let's have childcare centers at the electoral ward level. Now, to find these lands, we told our team members that you go on the field and find which ones are in the ownership of BMC. So there's no issue of acquisition here. So that is how. So at the master level, these were some of the instructions. There were no particular standards at that level. However, once the development plan was done and approved, the second stage was how do you implement it? So what kind of designs would one require? What kind of standards would one require to design them? So what we did was we thought we would make 1,000 square meter, we'll start with, as a land available for such centers. In Mumbai, it's particularly less. But we have come up with a framework much towards the end, almost 7-8 years down the line. We came up with a framework where all these dimensions and all the standards are written here, for mainly for other cities, I would say, because Mumbai does not allow me to be so liberal to have XX per person. Here we took an estimate of 1,000 square meter per ward for a space. When we made the policy, we looked into what are the standards that currently are followed by the women's hostels. So there are some 20-25 hostels already run by the private organizations, which our team, again, we outsourced it to the policy department of Mumbai University, and they did their internships with us, and they produced a report for us for all the 5 reservations that we made. Either they're in combination or they're separate, depending upon which ward has how much land. And that is how we kind of then looked at which is the optimum size required for each woman or each group, how many dormitories, how many single, how many consultation rooms. If there is a distressed person comes, she should be allowed to come in and stay for a day. So we came in with a kind of a list of requirements, whether it's dormitory, whether it's double bed, whether it's single bed. Women should be allowed to come and just express and get some counseling if required. What kind of space is required for a multi-purpose Aadhaar Kendra? Can we introduce a women co-working space or a women cafe, or some of these innovative ideas that we always think of but are not able to do it, at least through reservations, through formal reservations in the development plan. So there has been a lot of experimentation and references through other parallel designs, which we kind of took it and formed a requirement list for our centers.
This is fascinating, Prachi, and thank you for going down in this level of detail to understand how this process is also being implemented on the ground.
Yeah, so moment we introduced them in the development plan as reservations, and one chapter went into the report and the regulation. So mainly 3 documents. One is the report, one is the regulations, and third is the actual map. Yeah, so when that went in, it was maybe 2 years down the line, it was time to take it up for implementation. So if we just put it in the map and the DP, there is no point if we don't implement it. As it is, there is a very low rate of implementation of our master plans, our development plans. So we wanted to make sure that we need to get at least a few implemented on ground. So most 4-5 of us who had worked really close, we said that we need to form something called an advisory committee on gender, where there would be 6 members, and at least for first few years it would be the same 4-5 of us who had worked closely. Few from the other side. I was within BMC. So we did form a group, and it was formed under AC planning department of the BMC, and it was mainly to see to that whatever we had envisioned could actually be implemented, and help the department to see it follow the same kind of vision or the same kind of thought process that we had come up with. So the ACG, the Advisory Committee on Gender, was formed under AC Planning, who again reports to the Additional Municipal Commissioner of the BMC. So that was the hierarchy. Now, when you have AC Planning taking up these reservations for implementation, they need some kind of guideline. Now that is when we realized we need to have a policy. Once you have the policy, then we went on to the second stage of, we did draft that policy. It is it did not unfortunately get into the public domain or was approved by the corporations, because Maharashtra did not have corporators for a very long time. So by the time we were ready, then the political situation changed, and now is the time maybe we come back together and go for an official kind of approval and putting it in the public domain. But that policy, however, is with the department, and it did follow it for the reservations that were implemented. So the second stage was to look into what are the how many actual reservations are there, how many can be taken up first as a priority. Once that was done, we had to collaborate with another department, which is of the architecture department within the BMC. To do that, we had to convince the philosophy behind all this to the MA department. So we did even a one-day workshop with them to say that, why is it important to make this a different kind of a center, and it took us some time to convince them that this is not a hostel, it is housing. Women should think that this is a center for them, and it's like a house, not some place where they have restrictions, and bring in a new mix of these 4-5 amenities together, which will make this more of a home.
Absolutely. And I also noticed that one thing that you all did very strategically in the initial selection of the working women centers to be implemented was look at a few criteria: access to transit. For example, I think you also said that there was access to markets. So making sure that these were well connected around perhaps mixed land uses more broadly in order to situate these, so that you would have a safe and you had safe and connected locations for the centers. Now, what do you see, or what do you see in terms of implementation in maybe the short term or in the next 3 or 4 and 5 to 10 years?
I would say there is no short term here, because let's divide it into mid-term and long-term perhaps, because although we had thought that it would take, it would come between something called short or quick win, it didn't really fit into, because it was starting from entering into the master planning process to actually making reservations to bringing up a policy, forming a ACG, and then implementing and then monitoring it. So we started in 2015, and it got over, I think the inauguration of the first working women housing happened only 9 years later. So it's been a long process, but it did happen, and there is no shortcut, I would say. There it is midterm. So one is the implementation of the reservations yearly. We want to kind of see that at least. So first has taken a long time. I also hear that there are next 5 which are now coming up in this budget here. So and I'm sure it won't happen within a year, but at least it will begin. So once it begins, then it won't take 9 years for sure, because it has the policy and one center as a pilot ready for it to refer back to. It may take maybe 3-4 years as such, 1.5 year for planning and 3 years for construction. So that's your mid-term implementation strategy. The long term is actually getting the policy approved from the corporation level. As you mentioned, it needs to be in the public domain for others to refer to. That is one. And the second is scaling up to the other cities in Maharashtra. Now, how do we make this mandatory at the Urban Development Department of the state of Maharashtra? And that is something will help the scaling up of these reservations and this effort.
Fair enough. I think that is very, very well taken, Prachi. And thank you so much for your time and for your insights. I know that I have learned so much in this conversation. I would like to give you the floor now as to make any final comments that you have before we close the podcast.
Yeah, great. Thanks. It's been very interesting to share the story also from my side. What I think is it's important that we kind of continue these efforts to bring in gender mainstreaming into the urban planning mechanisms. It is extremely challenging and it's extremely slow process, but I would say it's not impossible. So we need to make these efforts in all the cities, and how do we scale it up and bring in more collaborations from private, public is something that we at the gender committee level have really thought multiple times. So while the government, at least in Mumbai, has made the effort to bring in the policy, implemented one building, come up with a framework, the challenge is how to bring in, how to make the reservations or the provisions popular. How do we get in philanthropic, or how do we get in CSR or the private sector, the corporate sector, to come up with something that we need to address this issue for?
Absolutely, and thank you for closing this podcast with a clear call to action aimed at scaling up what has been initiated. Again, thank you very much, Prachi, for your time and insights. And to our listeners, I hope you enjoyed listening to this. Narratives That Move is available on Spotify. Do tune in as we get insights from change makers on the ground. And please share your feedback with us.